we're here today, and we're excited to have our Member of Parliament, Mr. Ehsassi, with us for Willowdale. And we're partnering together just to answer some questions about what we're concerned about because of COVID-19 and all of the ramifications of that. So we're producing this little video. We're going to distribute it, and you're watching it today because maybe the questions that our MP will answer will help you. So we're glad that you're with us. And so welcome today to our church.
Thank you very much for having me, Pastor Blake. I know, and this has been something that I've been witnessing for 5 years now. The Willowdale Pentecostal Church has been doing a magnificent job demonstrating fellowship and being there for the residents of our riding. So I just wanted to really thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the hard work you're doing.
Great, and it's wonderful to have you here today, and we like to do our part, and we like to honor those. The Bible tells us to honor those in authority, and so we're doing this for our community, and we're happy to help with information. So I've got about 17 questions here we're just going to go through, and you can answer them to the best of your ability.
Absolutely.
And help us out. So this question, we solicited these from the neighborhood and from all of our platforms, and people sent them in. So first question is, I'm a pensioner, but worked on a contract in the spring and the fall the previous year. With COVID-19, I was not employed this past spring. Does my pension income count towards the $5,000 requirement in order to apply for the CERB, the CERB, or do I not qualify?
So, first things first, as this individual should know, there's a $5,000 exemption. So as long as you're making less than $5,000, it does not actually affect your pension. That's the first part. The second part is for the CERB, the way it works is you are required to have made a minimum of $5,000. So that actually assists you and qualifies you to actually apply for it.
Okay, very good. That was a very specific question. Some of them are more general.
Sure.
This one says, if I earn a small income from a home business, do I qualify for CERB? I keep saying CERB.
Mm-hmm. Yes, again, for the CERB, the important thing to bear in mind is individuals, if they are on the CERB, they can earn up to $1,000 a month, and it will not have any impact whatsoever on their CERB.
So that money can come from a home business or an employee situation, doesn't matter which.
Yes, correct.
Oh, okay, very good. Next question is, how does picking up, you kind of answered this, how does picking up the occasional shift at work affect my CERB, and do I have to report it? How often?
Again, same threshold. As long as you're not making more than $1,000 taxable on a monthly basis, you still qualify for the CERB.
Okay, very good. The next question is, are there programs in place to help those who do not qualify for CERB due to, this is very specific, due to residency requirements, like people waiting for a refugee status or immigration adjudications?
Well, as you know, there are many programs in place. One of the challenges we have been facing is to be responsive to constituents who are calling with respect to the variety of programs that are out there. However, as you know, one of the complications we're having are people who fall through cracks.
Right.
So the government is constantly scrutinizing all these programs to make sure that individuals aren't falling through those cracks. But it's very fact-specific for each
Sure.
one of these programs.
Yes, and I know that also you're encouraging people to ask charities like the Red Cross or the United Way, and they can refer you to places. Because I know that our church as a charity as well has been involved in helping people that fall through the cracks. And so that's another way. And then your constituency office has been helpful to us too, just to give us tips as to where we can get funding. Because the United Way, of course, funds other charities. And so
Of course.
we're all working together trying to not miss people. So that's good.
I mean, it was important when we were devising these programs that we actually leave it to organizations that have vast networks running throughout the country. So for that reason, the Red Cross and the United Way were obvious picks to administer some of these programs.
Yeah, that's great. This person asks, what plans does the government have in place to limit the spread of the COVID-19 virus from international travelers coming to Canada? This is a big one.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. That's something we've remained very much focused on. I think it's important to note that this is all the government departments are hands on deck. But as you can imagine, Canada Border Services has been doing an exemplary job. What they do is if someone does come to our borders, first of all, if they do have COVID, we will not allow them to come to Canada. That's the first part. The second thing to bear in mind is they are monitoring the situation very, very closely. So it is perfectly within their discretion, and this is something that they've been doing a fabulous job at, is they're asking individuals who are coming to our country whether they do have a plan in place to quarantine for 14 days. Once you approach the border, you're required to provide them not only with your contact information, but also to satisfy that officer that you do actually have a bona fide plan to quarantine yourself and assure them that you will not be a threat to Canadians.
All right, very good. So I don't know what you want to comment on this one, but this person's concerned, as many are. What will September be like for students and their ongoing education? And I think that would be, elementary, high school, but also post-high school, post-secondary students.
For sure.
So I don't know what you want to comment on that, what you think September will look like. But.
For sure. That's a question that we're getting quite a bit. But I think it's important to bear in mind that our schools are under the jurisdiction of the province. So I'm certain that the province of Ontario and other provinces likewise are very much focused on making sure that we do it in a responsible fashion. As for universities, we have been working very, very closely with universities. What you're likely to see is hybrid programs where there's some in-class attendance, a lot of virtual sessions, but that's left to each one of the universities to decide.
Yeah, sure. So if there was, a program where you need to be in lab and stuff, you can't really do that online.
It's
so
very,
those
very
kinds
difficult.
Of, hybrid
Absolutely.
situational work. All right, good. This person is asking a question I've heard a lot more of lately as a pastor, and that is, what long-term damage will this pandemic have on the mental health of students and isolated people? And what might be the government strategy to mitigate those effects in the future?
For sure. Well, firstly, as you can imagine, and your church has been doing an exemplary job, it's important that we be there for each other, that we reach out and recognize how isolation can be very, very difficult on individuals. So I think all Canadians can assist in that endeavor. But in addition to that, as you know, after in March or April, the government was seized of this issue, and we did set aside money both for young Canadians who might require some assistance and might need helplines, but also for seniors as well. So that's an issue we're monitoring very, very closely, and we want to make sure that the resources are there. So if people need assistance, they can seek help.
So many ramifications to what has happened over the last 4 or 5 months that nobody could really foresee, and that we're trying to play catch up on, right?
But it's been difficult. It's
Sure.
been difficult on various members of the family.
Yeah.
And it's important to bear in mind that we're all part of this together,
Yeah.
and we have to be there for each other. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Another business question. So many small businesses are struggling. How long will the CEWB be in place?
Well, the latest news is that the CEWB will now remain until December 21st, if I'm not mistaken. We appreciate full well that Canadian employers need all the help they can get. We're focused on Canadians, we're focused on employees, and so we have come forward and provided a lot of financial assistance, whether it be in terms of loans to businesses, whether it be in terms of this wage program that you mentioned, or even in terms of rental support. So we recognize full well that it's important to be proactive at this stage to make sure that we don't do more damage to the economy than need be.
Yeah, and that's a timely question because we're filming this, what's today, the 28th, I think, and so I think that just was passed yesterday in the House, right?
Yesterday, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I
for
think
sure.
I heard that on the radio, so that's good. All right. Another business question. If your small business has been affected by new reopening protocols like maximum customer totals in store or double the staff required in daycares, does the government have a long-term plan to help with that? And especially with daycare, because we can't get our economy going without daycare, but I know that it's doubled the staff that you need, and then the models for business may not work with that. So whether that's a subsidy to the person needing the daycare or to the business, has the government come up with anything on that?
Yes. First of all, allow me to say, since you were talking about opening businesses,
Yeah.
it's important for everyone to bear in mind that that is essentially a judgment call that each province makes. So
Okay.
the federal government does not get to decide whether we're in stage 1, stage 2,
No.
or stage 3, or for that matter, what businesses are affected. That is entirely up to the provinces. That having been said, I think we're very fortunate as a country that the provincial governments and the federal government have been working very closely together. We recognize that it's important to coordinate and cooperate and to be there for Canadians. However, the issue of daycares is a very, very important issue, no doubt about it. You will see that in the Restart program that we announced in early July, that the government has actually committed quite a bit of money to daycares. We appreciate that families need all the help they can get. We've always had a problem in terms of how expensive daycare can be, but in this particular instance, it's important for the government to step up and to be there for families. So that's exactly what our federal government has done.
So that will be more directed towards the daycares themselves, that program?
Yes,
I'm
correct.
sorry, I'm just ignorant of it. I didn't read up on that. So it's instead of individual-based like a credit or something, it's going to come more institutionally?
As I understand it, it's going to be,
Okay.
it's coming through the provincial governments, but it's something that the government, the federal government has invested.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Here's a little bit of a question that might require some diplomacy. Will the possible pressure from the USA on Canada to open the border quickly, or at least the perceived pressure of that, cause Canadians to be more vulnerable to a second wave of this disease?
Well, I think it's important for all of us to be focused on this issue. We should all be concerned about a second wave. But poll after poll tells us that Canadians are very much concerned about Americans coming to Canada. So we did carve out an exemption for essential workers, whether it be truckers or people who have to tend to businesses. But in the main, we think it's important to monitor the situation in the States, to certainly gauge how Canadians feel like that. Today, we know that that border will only remain open to essential workers until August 21st, I believe it is. But we're going to be monitoring that very, very closely. We have to listen to Canadians and be prudent and be responsible and make sure that we're protecting
I'm
Canadians.
sure our health officials that advise the government are in on that as to how well they're doing in another country. That would affect us, right, as far as their numbers. So
Absolutely.
I don't think you're probably going to want to share what those numbers are, but just in general, that's probably part of the equation, right?
Absolutely. And on this point, allow me to say one thing. I think as a country, we've been very, very fortunate, and we've been fortunate for two reasons. First of all, I think both the federal, provincial, and municipal levels of government have heeded the advice of public health officials. So they're the ones who are making the recommendations and the
Right.
judgment calls. And this has been consistent, as I said, throughout the three levels of government. That's the first part. The second part is it's been difficult, no doubt about it, but I think we can all take comfort that our various levels of government have been working very, very closely together, and we haven't allowed this issue to become politicized.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Here's a landlord question. With landlords certain to desire the opportunity to recoup lost income, how is the government preparing for the lifting of eviction moratoriums? And I don't know if that's a federal thing or not, but
Thank you for pointing that out. That is entirely a provincial issue.
Right.
So I think it's important for individuals to look at the provincial legislation, recognize what the scope of the provincial government's responsibilities are, and on many occasions they can work out individual deals with their landlords.
Very good. As many get back to work and social interaction increases, as we go into phase 3, well, we're not there yet when this is taped, but close to it, hopefully.
Not in Toronto. Yep.
Not in the GTA, right? What is the government doing to ensure our frontline workers continue to have all the PPE needed if there is a second wave?
Sure. Well, I would say in the main, there are two elements to the question you've asked. First of all, we have a Minister of Procurement. She has been incredibly busy ensuring that we can source PPE from various countries around the world. But in addition to that, you will recall that the Prime Minister and Minister Baines, to whom I serve as Parliamentary Secretary, did make a call in March, and we are making every attempt to mobilize Canadian companies. And we've been very, very fortunate. More than 7,000 Canadian companies have been in touch with us, telling us what their capacities are, what they need to do to produce PPE. And the government has been there communicating with them, providing assistance to make sure, to the extent possible, that we're producing PPE in Canada.
It's almost like World War II retooling and helping and all of that.
Absolutely.
Like there's a lot of similarities historically to tough times when we've had to come together, right? So
For
that's
sure.
good to know. It's good to know.
But again, let me just emphasize that Canadian companies have been doing a magnificent job under very difficult circumstances, answering that call and doing a lot of difficult work producing PPEs.
Very good. This is a really smart question to me. Is there a plan for the faster or quicker COVID-19 test to be used? The one not merely used for professional athletes, but maybe used at the airport as people arrive from different countries so that we can get results in 3 hours instead of 3 days. And would that help solve the problem?
For sure. As I'm sure you have heard, we have emphasized time and time again that safety is our number one priority. So we have been in touch with various innovative Canadian companies that are doing world-class research and exceptional work. Just to name one of those, there is a company called Spartan. Spartan is a cutting-edge Canadian company that is doing incredible work insofar as testing is concerned. So we have been working closely with them, have been providing them funding, and as far as I understand, there will be more good news forthcoming in terms of new testing capacity that will be quite time sensitive as well.
Yes, sometimes I think we think of all the help the government is giving to individuals, but on the other side of it, this is also challenging to fund research and all of that, and for vaccines. I don't know if you can tell us anything
Absolutely.
about vaccine development, but
Sure, there are many initiatives currently underway. You will recall that in March we made the decision that we have to be prepared. So we have provided approximately $1 billion in funding to Canadian researchers who are doing really incredible work, but also we're prepared. In Vancouver, we provided some funding to a Canadian company to make sure that they can produce vaccines, irrespective of where that vaccine is found. As you can imagine, there are over 150 research teams around the world, very much focused on producing a vaccine. But we thought it was important that we be ready. So as soon as that vaccine is made available, we can produce it here in Canada. We even looked into making sure that we have syringes for 38 million syringes. So as soon as hopefully we do hear good news, we can gear up and produce for Canadians.
oh, that's wonderful. Good. And how is the government preparing for, this is kind of a little bigger picture question. How is the government preparing for trade conflicts and international trade issues that arise out of the results of this pandemic? Tariffs on aluminum, for example, and different concerns. So this probably comes from a business person.
Sure. Well, as you know full well, something we've come to realize over the course of the past several years is we live in uncertain times. So it's important that we always be ready. As you mentioned, there have been some murmurs in the States about once again applying tariffs on our steel and our aluminum. We have been working around the clock, speaking to American businesses and lawmakers to let them know that that's not in the interest of American consumers. But also, as was the case a couple of years ago, if there are tariffs that are applied to Canadian goods, we will retaliate and make sure that we stand up for Canadian companies.
Okay, very good. Just a couple more questions. You're doing great. Regarding the incoming flights, having people test positive, what assurances, just a little more detail, what assurances do we have that quarantine protocols are really being followed or enforced so that we minimize the possibility of a second wave? So after they leave the airport, what's in place for that?
Sure. Again, insofar as this issue is concerned, there are various pieces to the puzzle. First of all, carriers are supposed to ensure that they only allow individuals who have no symptoms and do not have COVID are allowed to board. In addition to that, once individuals arrive in Canada, our officials are there and questioning individuals who are arriving. Again, requiring that they provide contact information and also satisfying those officers that they do have a plan in place to quarantine for 2 weeks. Unfortunately, there have been instances in which individuals arriving here have either misled officials at the border or did not end up at the destinations they were providing to those officials. It's important to bear in mind that fines can be levied, and those fines can be as high as $750,000. So we think it's important to act responsibly and to let everyone know that our officials are doing an incredible job under very difficult circumstances.
And with contact tracing, you'd be able to go back and levy those fines because you'd be able to see where an outbreak started and all of that.
Absolutely.
So that's what that helps all levels of government and organizations that are working with the government do that, right?
Absolutely. As you rightly point out, contact tracing is a very important element. It's painstaking work. It's intensive work. But as you know, officials who work for StatsCan, they're the ones who stepped up and said they have the capacity to assist in that endeavor. And so we've been developing that program to make sure that we're acting in a focused and responsible fashion.
Well, this is, I've got one more question, but let me just say before we finish that this has been really informative for me, and as somebody who answers questions and talks to people all the time, I thank you for sharing, and there's nothing like good communication to help us navigate through where we are, and as this video is made available through all of the various Willowdale neighborhood associations and in the riding, we hope that people will really listen, and thank you for coming here today and sharing. This is the last question, and then we'll be finished for today.
Absolutely. On that point, allow me, Pastor
Sure.
Blake, to thank you for the leadership that you have always demonstrated, but we are very much in your debt for all the hard work that your church is doing here in Willowdale.
Well, it's a very small thing to have this be able to be something that we could do. I will mention that our partnership with the Summer Jobs Program has 12 students hired this summer, and everything that you're watching at home is happening here today because we were training our students in broadcast and use of equipment and all of that, among other things. So, it's good to work together.
I had a chance, thanks to you, to meet with the impressive members of your team, and they're doing a magnificent job. Thank you.
That's great. We're really proud of them. All right, last question. What steps will we take to learn lessons from this experience to ensure that we have all the PPE, for example, that we need maybe manufactured in Canada in the future, so we're not so dependent on foreign countries when we're in crisis? And this has really been scary because it's just one disease. There could be another one in 5 years or 10. We hope it's a one-in-a-century thing,
Sure.
but we don't know. And so are there lessons just on a policy level that we've learned moving forward?
I think that every country has come to that realization that global supply chains can be very, very fickle, and certainly not act in a timely fashion. So there is no doubt that as a country, we always have to be vigilant and make sure that we have all the necessary supplies for certain essential goods. But this is one of those occasions on which I think we will come out of this after all the sacrifices that Canadians have made and really examine a host of different issues. One that is obviously very close to all our hearts are long-term care facilities. That's one thing. The other one is supply chains and the possibility of offshoring. And thirdly, as you rightly point out, making sure that we have essential goods stocked up in the event this should recur again.
Great. Well, thank you for being here today. We want to thank everybody who sent in questions from our appeals. We hope that you got some answers today, and you can continue to call us and contact your MP if you're not in Willowdale, or Mr. Ehsassi's office, and we're all here to help in our community working together. So thanks for watching today, and we hope that it was informative and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very grateful.